Okay, I think we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome everybody for coming. This is a great crowd. Good news, bad news. Bad news is the crowd. The good news is we got a great crowd. And I think you're going to enjoy today's topic. And the panelists that we have are going to provide really interesting perspective for you. Got a few business items to get through first. Got our reports. Gene, you here? Okay. Secretary's report. Okay, Gene's not here today. We do have copies of both our finance and our secretary's report in the back if anybody wants a copy. Pat, you here? Okay. All right, no secretary, no treasurer today. So I'm going to turn this over to Melissa, and we've got a special word we'd like to present.
For those of you that maybe didn't get a handout, we're going to be posting all the handouts online. I apologize. We're going to go over kind of what's in them, but you'll see them sooner than later. We're also passing around a sign-in sheet. It's very important to us to reflect how many people have shown up, and thank you so much for all of you for coming here today. If you're not on, your name does not appear in there, please add it to the guest sign-in, which is in the back part of the pages, and continue to make sure that it makes its way through the crowd. Beyond that, one moment. I like to be more stuck. So, oh, it's not turned on. We're going to lose effect here. Part of our meeting today is looking at Jane Freitag. Love Jane to death. Absolutely love her. I'm not really for sure why the sound's not working. But just imagine the beginning theme of Superman. It really had an impact. I'm kind of bummed it's not working. Oh well, I quit. So, in the beginning, Jane was here. This year, we marked the 25th anniversary of the Marathon County Alcohol and Other Drug Partnership Council, most recently shortened to AOD Partnership, so it's a little bit easier to say and a little more memorable. Shout out to Kurt Howard there. But one thing about Jane is that she has been very passionate, very elegant, very dedicated to the work that we do here in the community. When I say she's been here from the beginning, she was part of bringing that original group together. She was part of bringing multiple grant opportunities, multiple people into the community that are also passionate about this issue. And I thought this quote really did sum up as far as kind of Jane's mantra. If I was going to assign a mantra to Jane, this would be something that I would assign to her. We can choose to be affected by the world, or we can choose to affect the world. You can't just sit still and wait for things to happen. So in light of it being 25 years, I was trying to get you guys an idea of what life was like 25 years ago. Some of the popular things that were going on. We've got the Bush Quail campaign. Some of you guys are like, 25 years ago? So don't look at me funny if you're one of those youngins in the crowd. Population was just about 245 million in the U.S. The internet was born 25 years ago. The Lockerbie bombing happened. We launched the Hubble telescope. And I'm sure some of you guys will remember who that is and who that is. Ooh, that's right, smart word. So anyway, so I could just do that. Duh. And one thing that I thought was interesting, I was doing a little bit of research for this, was the price difference. You look at the prices of things compared to now, a stamp was 24 cents. I'm sure Dave Selzer, wherever Dave ended up being, would know how much those are. He collects stamps. The median average for income was just under $25,000. You know, going to the movies was only $3.50. Wow, you can't even park your car for that. Gas 90 cents, just to kind of give you an idea what life was like 25 years ago. And who can forget pop culture? The 80s was full of great things like Uncle Jesse, Diana, gotta love the three-wheeler there, Whitney Houston, different movies, Michael Jackson lit himself on fire. So, you know, a lot of things have happened since then. I also wanted to show you kind of what the world was like as far as drug prevention and drugs in the community goes. You know, many of us that are of that age can remember the after-school specials. I will never forget Helen Hunt freaking out on PCP and running through a window. You get home after school and there was some message for you by actors who ended up actually turning into drug addicts themselves. But I learned it from watching you. It was also the dawn of Prozac and some of those big prescription drug launches that were highly marketed to people. We saw an increase in HIV and AIDS through the mid-'80s due to the increase of IV drug use. People didn't know very much about those viruses. Different advertisings, Bud Light using Bud McKenzie, you got Camel using Joe Camel, little known factoid, that more 6-year-olds recognized Joe Camel in the height of his campaign than Mickey Mouse. And they also knew that he sold cigarettes. And that is a campaign. And up in the upper right-hand corner, it kind of looks like popcorn. It's not. It's crack. Crack, freebase cocaine was actually really hitting the streets hard about 25 years ago. So I just kind of wanted to paint a picture, and who can't forget the Just Say No campaign. So at this point, I'd like to have Dave or Ron, or both of you come up here. We just have a little award.
Do we have to come up? It's going to be kind of hard to get up there.
Oh yeah,
I think he's fine right there.
All right, but you don't have the thing. Well, we'll get
You
into
can
it.
bring the thing here?
I will. But do you want to speak first?
Okay, sure. As we go back to the beginning, there are several people here that I call the bridge people, those of us that bridge the old partnership with the new partnership. And if they all kind of stand up, I know Lisa's there, she was with us, Judy, been with us a long time. And you know, we got our early beginnings as part of the Federal Highway Commission. The impact of fatalities on the highway. Dave Jacobson was one of our early movers or shakers that brought federal money to the project, to the partnership. I remember John Waldron fondly. John was one of the, I think he signed our charter, our original charter. Lynn Nims has passed on. He was a faithful member for many years. So, as the partnership kind of had its peak and then kind of waned, I remember one time having a meeting in a phone booth. I know Dave was there, I think, Jane was there at that meeting, and we're so pleased and proud of the resurgence, the rebirth, the current partnership. As you look around you, and you see all the people that kind of bridge the old with the new. Still a big job to do, but Jane, you know, is one of those bridge people, and we're going to miss her greatly. She's been with us faithful. Her quiet leadership skills and passion has been the glue that represents the old and the new. So we thank you, Jane, for your years of faithful membership. And we have a presentation.
It's right in front of you. You can read it when you get it to her.
Right here. There you go. Wow, it's kind of heavy. Should we unsheath it?
Oh yes.
Oh, wow.
Gotta put my glasses on.
Sure. We chose a drop because of just the effect that Jane's going to leave on all of us for many years.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
In recognition of 25 years of leadership and dedication, your influence will be felt for generations. Oh, thank you. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to see this room packed, because the work is so important. And I have to thank those people who were with me when we were large in membership and small in membership, and it has just, again, never been better. So thank you. I do want to say I was 5 years old when I joined, so 25 years has gone by really fast. But the work you do is tremendous, and please continue to work hard. I'm not going to be a stranger. I will be back in the community now and again, so I will be following you and making sure that your work continues. So thanks to you for everything.
And everybody here has a little postcard stapled to their packet. And if you don't have a postcard stapled to your packet, again, these will be put online. But you're all invited. We're going to do kind of a little farewell coffee. So if you want to come say thank you, chum it up with Jane. We're going to be meeting next Friday, at Big B. Just have some nice conversations. So if you're interested in coming, we hope to see you there. Jane?
Thank you.
Do you want me to start? Next up, we have the stat updates and volunteer opportunities. You all should have a copy of some of the updates in your packet. It's behind your agenda. Just some things to point out. Our next heroin and other opiates group, that's really behind the Pushback Against Drug Abuse campaign. We're going to be meeting on Monday, June 10th, here, or excuse me, at the Wausau Police Department from 3 to 4:30. These are all open meetings. If you want to get involved in a certain area, you can't make meetings, let us know. Let Aaron, who's wandering out in the hallway, or I know, and we will get you connected with where your passions lie and what you're interested in. I think that we are going to have, it just says youth to youth, that's incorrect. It's supposed to be youth for youth, number 4. We're going to actually be meeting with our youth group after this, so if you have any opportunities for them over the summer, I invite you to stay around for that. And finally, we have a Recovery is Possible group meeting at the end of the month on the 28th. And please continue to take pictures of what you see in the community, crazy marquees, big displays. 4th of July is always a good one for alcohol displays in grocery stores. And lastly, if you're going to any community events where they're selling alcohol, we definitely would love for you to fill out one of our festival assessment forms. It basically says, is alcohol being sold in big quantities? Are they doing 2-for-1s? Are they doing pitchers? A variety of different, very simple, basic questions. So we definitely invite you to take those for us as well. Partner updates? Deb? There you are. Before you have Deb speak, is there any other partner updates? If you could just raise your hands to make sure we... No? No? You good? Ron? Okay.
We're good.
Okay, Deb.
Okay, my name is Deb.
Do you want to use the mic?
Sure. Just a minute. I have a soft voice. My name is Deb Champion. I'm with Infusion Ministries, and I'd like to introduce a new program to you this morning. We have developed a restoration program for those struggling with addictions, which encompasses treatment, healing, and transformation of the whole person. We believe addictions are symptoms of deeper emotional issues, and our aim is to get to the root of these issues. We use 2 different methods. One method is temperament therapy. Temperament addresses a person's emotional or behavioral characteristics. We are all wired differently, and therefore we respond or react differently to those around us, our situations, and our environments. Sozo is another method we use. It's an inner healing ministry, which gets to the root of past or present hurts or wounds and abuses, which we believe is necessary for complete freedom. We also incorporate group classes and individual mentoring. Our goal is to provide supervised, structured housing, which would include physical fitness and a healthy diet. We have secured office space on Washington Street for our ministry office where we can hold these group sessions and individual meetings. What we're coming before you today is we have a need for the housing aspect of it, and we believe that this housing aspect is vital to the success of this program. So if any of you know of anything that is available or have any ideas, we certainly will appreciate your input. We have a whole staff of professional people. We have a certified temperament therapist. He has his master's. We have Dr. Henry Moen, who is has a PhD in counseling, who is writing our curriculum so that we can pass this on to other groups to use. We have a FIED instructor, a nurse, a nutritionist, and we have interns who are willing to staff the housing project. And I have with me here Dale, who we haven't used the full program on him. He's only been in a part of it, and it's already had a huge impact on his life, and I'll let him share that with you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is my first public speaking, so please bear with me. I've been a hardcore drug user for 20 years now. I've been through the system numerous times, AOD numerous times. it never had an impact on me. It taught me what alcohol and drugs were doing to my body as a whole. The long-term effects. It never really got down to the root of why I drank and used drugs. I always thought I did it for the fun of it. And I believed that for 20 years until I met a pastor counselor named Sean Osborne, which within 2 months he took me in his home and has counseled me nonstop for the last 2 months. And I have been clean and sober now for 4 months. I truly believe in my heart that without this man's help, I would still be living this lie that I needed to use drugs to cover up my emotions and everything else that I was hiding throughout my life. I wasn't just using it because it was fun. I was using it because I was hurting from all sorts of different things that happened in my life. And I can stand here today and proudly say that I'm on the road to true happiness.
Okay, wonderful. Last call for any other partner updates. Just so you guys all know, we did make some limited copies of some of the resources, additional resources from today's presentation. Again, we're going to be scanning everything in and loading it both to our AOD website, as well as we'll be loading some of this materials onto our pushbackdrugs.com website. So if you missed anything, I'm sorry. You will get it though. Oops, wrong button. Sorry. Technology. Okay, we're going to move into our program today. Just to introduce myself again, I'm Melissa Dotter. I do the Drug Free Communities program here in Marathon County. I'm staff to the AOD partnership. Our membership has grown from a few dozen members, I know Jane and Ron remember this, a few dozen members to over 200 active members, and we have over 500 people across the state that receive our weekly emails. So if you don't receive our weekly update, make sure that you're continuing to pass around the sign-in. Make sure it gets to the folks that are exercising this noon hour in the back. So the Pushback campaign was launched officially on May 7th. The goals of this campaign were simple. It was to raise awareness on the scope of the problem of illicit drugs in our community, using heroin and prescription opiates as the prime example as what's attacking us most heavily at this point. Also is to engage the community in the efforts, is to get people involved. So what we've asked today from our panel, and we'll put another table up here in front so then everybody can be seen, is to kind of both briefly go over the scope of the problem from those that spoke at the press conference, and if you haven't seen it, you can see it on its entirety at the pushbackdrugs.com website. As well as we invited some new community partners in to kind of add to this conversation. Then we're going to have some more local stories, and we're going to wrap up with how you can get involved in the community. One thing that I do ask, questions may come up as we go, and everybody got one of our new fancy swanky pens with our new website on them. I'm just going to ask if you can write those down, and we're going to get to questions and answers at the end. I just don't want to break it up too much, so we make sure we get all of our speakers in. So, the goal of our first Pushback Against Drug Abuse press conference was to raise awareness on the scope of the issue. We are going to be holding 3 more press conferences coming up through the rest of this year. But our first one was looking at heroin prescriptions and illicit drugs as a threat to our public health and safety. Heroin, it is an old drug, absolutely, but it has become a new killer. I'm not going to go too much into it because we have some folks that are going to speak to it. So we're just going to set it up quick, set up another table, but if I could have Lance come up and speak first from the DA perspective.
Good morning. I'm not going to rehash a lot of the stuff that was discussed in the first press conference. If anyone has any questions, certainly feel free to touch base with me later. But what I was asking was talk about the trends that we're seeing at the DA's office. as Melissa said, my name is Lance Leonard. I am the individual at the DA's office that focuses on the prosecution of felony drug offenses. Right now, a huge part of my job focuses on the prosecution of heroin-related offenses, whether those are personal use offenses or trafficking offenses. And the gentleman that's just coming in is perhaps responsible for a lot of those cases I received, that being Gary Schneck from the Marathon County Special Investigations Unit. But really, in my work, I have seen a couple of trends since I took over as the drug prosecutor. Good morning, Gary.
Hey, how you doing?
And first is really, you can only categorize it as an explosion. Melissa said this is an old drug. That's absolutely true. But what we've seen in the last 5 years, really in the last 3 years, is a dramatic increase in heroin-related offenses. I can tell you, and I have the data if anyone is interested, and I believe Melissa's included it in previous materials that the partnership has put out. But as early as 2008, there were years when we had 0 heroin-related cases that came through the DA's office. That is not the case now. So the first trend is a dramatic increase. This year we're on pace to have 75 meth-related cases, which is a 75% increase in the previous year. And with respect to heroin, we're having a 15% increase for a total of 53 cases. So it's a dramatic increase from as few as 5 years ago. So that's really been a strain on our office. The second trend I'll talk about is not only have we seen an explosion in the number of cases, we're really seeing an explosion in the volume that's being dealt with in those cases, and that's specifically true in trafficking-related offenses. The first heroin trafficking cases that we had when I took over in the prosecutor's office in the drug unit were cases involving the sale of less than a gram of heroin. Well, last year we prosecuted someone for a conspiracy that related to the trafficking of over 250 grams per week was the information we were getting from some informants. So that's a dramatic increase, especially when you consider that heroin is normally used in 0.05 to 1/10 of a gram quantities. That's how it's purchased on the street, is generally 1/10 of a gram. So that trend has also been dramatic, the increase in the quantity. And the final trend I'll talk about is the dramatic increase in the number of investigations and prosecutions relating to drug overdose deaths, and those stem directly from heroin. I don't have any other reckless homicide cases regarding drug overdoses other than those related to heroin. And what we're seeing is that increase, a dramatic increase in investigation, and also a dramatic increase in the prosecutor's office in the number of cases that we're charging. I know at the last partnership meeting, I talked about just the day before the meeting, I had an initial appearance with an individual who was charged with another reckless homicide in Marathon County for a heroin-related death. I can tell you today, just before getting here, I had a hearing related to a 24-year-old mother of 2 young children who was appearing in court on multiple files related to her possession of heroin. Her heroin possession had caused her to spend a considerable amount of time in jail. She lost custody of her children. These are the types of cases we're seeing in the DA's office. And really, when you think about that on a personal level, the impact on the county is quite dramatic. So those are the trends we're seeing in the DA's office, and I think Gary can talk to the trends in law enforcement. That's all right.
Mr. Schneck or Lynn, would you like to go first?
That's right.
Since Lieutenant Schneck is here from the drug unit, I'll just talk briefly. But I'm sure he has some information about the trends and statistics and that sort of thing. In the city of Wausau, I think Lance hit it right on the head when he said that there's kind of been an explosion of heroin activity. Back in 2004 and 2005, when I worked for Gary in the drug unit, we didn't see any cases of heroin. We didn't work on. We had no information from any informants that heroin was in the community. And now here it is, and it's in full force, and it's having a tremendous impact on the community. We've had 2 deaths in the city of Wausau that have been attributed directly to heroin It's become a routine for our emergency responders to go to heroin overdoses and transport them to the hospital. And it's really an alarming trend. So part of the pushback campaign is to educate the community about the scope of the problem and to get the community involved in the solution to the problem, because you know, in law enforcement, we're pretty good at generating reports and generating statistics and making arrests. But there's just no way that police alone can resolve the issue through arrest. So we need a holistic community response, and we need help from everybody, from people in high school and junior high school to people that are retired in the community, to educators. Everybody in the community can make a difference in this problem. And that's why we're here today, is to help solicit some of that help from the community so that we can resolve this issue. You know, part of the issue is letting people know that they can call law enforcement if you see suspicious activity. We want you to call us so that we can respond and find out what's going on. Maybe it's not drug activity, maybe it's benign, but if we don't get the call, we can't check it out. You know, you can be a part of your neighborhood group. We have law enforcement liaisons to all of the neighborhood groups. We provide presentations to what might drug activity look like, to help people understand what it would look like and what you can do if you see it. So it is becoming a big trend, and I'm really happy to see so many people here today from throughout the community to be a part of the solution. And you know, we're more than happy in law enforcement to help out if you have any questions to call, and we just have to have that line of communication open so that you know, you can let us know what's going on, because we only have a few officers that are working each day, and we've got 150,000 people in this community that can call us and let us know specifically where we need to be. So we appreciate everybody being here, and I'll turn it over to the Commissioner.
Before you jump in, Commissioner,
Oh, sure.
and Tippett, you can stay standing.
In the back, we have some copies. Chief Hardell at our press conference provided information on drug-related arrests and calls for service over the last 18 months. And we continue to have that updated, and we'll continue to add that to our pushback site. So if you want to see, it's WASA specific, but you'll be able to see some of the impact. Since our press conference just less than a month ago, we've had I think WASA had over 10 different calls related to overdose or arrest just in the city of WASA.
And that's the part where we're really good at generating reports. The summary, I think, is 18 pages. So
27.
27. Okay.
So you have some copies in the back, so if you want to see them, you can see them. Otherwise, like I said, we are going to upload them as well.
All right, thanks. Sorry I was late. I was doing my day job before I got over here and got caught up in the middle of some stuff. So, and the only other thing is that I can't figure out is why all the people that worked in the drug unit that I supervised are becoming captains, chief deputies. They must have had a good teacher, right? So I am happy to say that our community, I think, is pretty lucky. We've had a relationship. You know, you want to talk about combined services and all that other kind of business. Marathon County, WASA, Everest Metro PD, we've got a great relationship together. The people that serve in the Special Investigations Unit are all members of the WASA Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, and Everest Metro Police Department. We've had that partnership for a lot of years, and I think it's been very, very successful. You know, unfortunately, problem is I probably don't have enough people in the unit to pick up the workload that we've seen come to this community. And it's not just WASA, it's other communities like WASA, Stevens Point, Eau Claire, La Crosse, Appleton City is a similar size. It's a huge problem that's exploded up in the area. We kind of call it, you know, it's a soft target up here where they get individuals involved in the drug trafficking trade. There's a lot of money to be made in the drug trafficking trade, and people know this and they're taking advantage of it. Unfortunately, one of the things that comes with all of that I want to speak to with us in law enforcement that's especially disconcerting is the amount of violence that gets imported with the drug trade. We didn't see that here. I grew up in Wausau. I've lived here all my life, except the time that I spent in the military. But things are changing around here, and not always for the better. You know, there are some great things, and I'm really happy to see so many people from the community here concerned, involved in what's going on. But there's a lot of things that concern us, and one of those things, as law enforcement, and one of those things are the amount of firearms and guns that we're seeing in the hands of illegal felons up here. You know, I know there's this whole national debate going on about gun violence. My debate, the thing that I'm looking at, are the people that shouldn't have firearms, not the legal gun owners, that type of thing, but are the people that are the convicted felons, the people that are involved in drug trafficking, that kind of thing. That's where we see the most incidences of violence on individuals, and it's not only heroin. Heroin is a big deal. A lot of that stuff, what we're seeing is coming out of the inner cities, coming out of Chicago, coming out of Milwaukee, coming via gangs, but through also other people that live up in our community that they're recruiting to do this type of thing. So that's why we're counting on you folks. Let us know. Like I've told everybody, and I told the gentleman today that I talked to on the phone, we could double the size of our drug unit tomorrow and keep everybody busy. The level of the size of the drug investigations that we've been doing would probably rattle a lot of people's teeth if they knew exactly everything that was going on in the size of the types of organizations that are working up here. If people don't think that the drug cartels don't have a hold here in central Wisconsin, guess again. They do through the people that they're dealing with in Chicago. They do. We see the guerrilla grows that are going on up in the National Forest area in northern Wisconsin. And these people are connected directly to these cartels, and that violence is coming with them. So that's something that's really disconcerting that we want to see, and that we're being very aggressive about fighting as far as a drug unit and those types of things in the drug trafficking organizations. Just recently, I know the Wausau PD has done, I think we've really stepped forward in some positive directions as far as community resource officers, where they work hand in hand with the drug unit now, where we focus on problem areas in the city, where they use the resources of the drug unit, we use the resources of the patrol division at the PD and the sheriff's department to try to focus on some of those problem neighborhoods that we can. But we can't do it alone. Like Ben said, we have to have the help of the people out there, and people think that we're not paying attention to them. Sometimes it may seem that way when they're calling in the complaints or they're calling into us. You know, sometimes we know about what's going on, but we can't divulge all the time all that information to people, what we're doing, or if we're in the middle of an active investigation. But we don't ignore the things that are coming in. We do take, try to piece it all together as far as what's happening, in the community. The other thing that's kind of associated with it, and I think I use a pretty conservative number, I think Chief Ardell over at Wausau PD says it too, about 70 to 80% of our property crimes that are occurring around the area in the city and in the county, in Marathon County, typically are associated also with drugs. People looking for money for drugs that are the addicts. We're not so concerned about, we are concerned about, the people that are addicted to the drugs, but we're also, as far as the drug unit goes, we're concerned about the people that are bringing that and importing it here to this area, and that's our big focus, is to try to find out who these people are. We're not throwing people in jail. You hear a lot of talk on the news about, all these people in jail for marijuana. Well, we don't put people and keep them in there just for marijuana. There's a lot of bad people. A lot of these people need to be kept away from the rest of the community, and that's our focus, is getting the real bad guys that are involved in setting up all these organizations and profiting from the misery of all these people that do have these different addictions. And there are a lot of robberies. We're starting to see the shootings. We're starting to see the homicides, and it just isn't related to heroin. Methamphetamine is a huge issue here also, besides the heroin. And you've heard about the gun store burglaries, gun store robberies, that type of thing, and the stuff that the patrol officers are coming across on the street with some of the stolen guns and some of the information that we're hearing. It's not a pleasant scenario that's being painted. But, we are trying to do our best, and with your help, hopefully we can make some inroads into what's going on in the community, make it a safer community. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move from public safety into kind of the public health impact of heroin and prescription drug and other illicit drug abuse. So, John, would you like to go first, briefly?
Well, good afternoon, John Larson, medical examiner. You've heard me before, I've talked about this, and I'm just going to kind of reiterate what I'm saying and what I've seen, and that's that heroin kills people. This causes people to die. It brings death to families. These are our family. These are our neighbors. This occurs here in our community, here in Wausau, Wisconsin, in Marathon County. We've had homicides, drug-related homicides here in our community. We've had heroin overdoses here in our community. I've recently investigated a death that I'm highly suspicious is going to have a component of crack cocaine. This is happening right here on our streets, in our hometown, where we live. I ask you to please help law enforcement, help all of us. This is something that's going to affect every one of us. It has already affected every one of us. But it can get worse. I can guarantee you that. That if we band together as a community, we can fight this. And I implore you, I ask you for your help with our campaign to push back against drugs. Thank you.
Good morning. Afternoon. Oh my goodness, it's afternoon. I guess to give you a little bit of history, Wausau Health Services, I don't know if you're familiar with us, but we are a comprehensive outpatient substance abuse treatment program in Wausau. Although we treat lots of different addiction issues, the primary focus of our program is opiate dependence. And not only are we treating people with individual and group counseling, but as well we're treating them with medications such as methadone, Suboxone, or Subutex. And that's to deal with the physical withdrawal symptoms associated with opiates, because they can be pretty severe. One of the things that I was thinking about as I was sitting here is because I know everybody's been talking about the growth, and we actually noticed it. I noticed it probably 3 years ago, and that's where I started knocking on Melissa's door and saying, Melissa, we need to talk. Because I was noticing a significant increase. I've been with Wausau Health Services since before we opened the doors, so I've been with them 10.5 years. In the beginning, all we saw, the number one thing that people were addicted to in our clinic was OxyContin, and they were snorting it. Rarely did I see any heroin, once in a very blue moon, and almost no IV drug use at all. Today, I would say 70 to 80% of our incoming patients, IV heroin use. It's been a drastic change. I can't even begin to talk about the change. On top of it, when we started, again, 10 years ago, we had people that came in addicted just to narcotic painkillers. And today, a lot of polysubstance abuse, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, meth. We're seeing more meth in our program, seeing more bath salts, things like that, benzos, etc. So people don't come in anymore just with one substance of abuse. We're talking a lot of times it's kind of a smorgasbord of drugs, and so we have some real serious issues going on. In addition, when I was thinking about the growth, we grew more in an 18-month period. It's slowed now, and we're taking a breather, and we're a little grateful because it was overwhelming. Within an 18-month period, we grew by nearly 100 patients. I had to add 3 full-time counselors very quickly, which just in 10.5 years had never happened before. And just to give you an indication how quickly we've grown. And one of the things I was also thinking about were things such as alcohol and pot. I don't know if people realize it, but those truly are gateway drugs. Most of my patients have started with either alcohol or pot. Pot is the bane of my existence because I like to make jokes about that, so it doesn't drive me crazy, because it's natural. And after all, it's legal in California and I guess apparently some other states, and so we have a lot of justifying going on. But I'll tell you what, I really want people to understand that if you know somebody, some young person who's just using marijuana, don't take that stance, because I'll tell you what, it's a very short window now. I know Sue Nowak and I have talked a lot about that, where I used to see a long window from somebody starting either alcohol or pot and eventually making their way to opiates. And now that window has really, really shortened. And we have adolescents now. You know, we're talking 16, 15 years old that are now using IV heroin. This has become very serious. On top of it, I know Mike and I work very closely together, and we do HIV and Hep C testing in our program, and we have seen a significant increase in Hep C, and for the first time in, you know, I mean, really that I've seen a significant increase as well as HIV, but really the Hep C. Again, I want to stress to you about the adolescents. I can't speak enough about that. That really, this is what, to me, in my mind, what this pushback campaign is about, is making sure that our children are safe, because at the end of the day, anybody who's addicted, you guys, first of all, they're people first with addiction issues. They are not an addict. In fact, it makes my skin crawl when I hear the word addict, because when I look at somebody who walks through our door, that's somebody's child. They're valued and they are loved. And that's one of the things that I want to focus on. Lots of bad people out there doing lots of bad things as far as selling to our people, you know, to our community and bringing guns in and that. But people with addiction issues, that's where I really want to, that's where my focus is in helping avoid that for our children. Thank you.
Hello everybody, and thank you for allowing me to come today. My name is Mike. I work at the AIDS Resource Center of Wisconsin. AIDS Resource Center of Wisconsin is a statewide organization and serves to alleviate the effects of HIV/AIDS disease in the community. We also work real closely, heavily with hepatitis C. In 1994, ARCW opened up its first needle exchange program in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and has since then expanded it across the state to all of our offices in the state. In 2011, ARCW distributed just over 1 million syringes throughout the state. In 2012, we distributed 2.2 million syringes without adding any additional staff or anything like that. So there's just a really large increase in injection drug use itself when looking at the increase of heroin, things like that. Now, we are a regionalized organization as far as the Wausau office, so I don't have just Marathon County statistics or anything like that. But what's really important is to remember these are our neighboring communities, our neighboring counties right with us. Currently at ARCW, we're distributing over 15,000 syringes a month on average. This year, we're projected to hand out 185,000 syringes to active injection drug users in the community. Those individuals are primarily the age of 25 to 34. However, what is really concerning is there's just an alarming trend of younger individuals that are now injecting drugs. The next fastest group accessing services ages 19 to 24 from us. You know, so just a really big concern that way. And what we're also seeing is just a really large increase in individuals 13 to 18 who are now injecting drugs. When we first started our needle exchange program, we didn't have individuals under 18 coming to our office trying to access drug equipment to inject safer or anything like that, and that's just a really alarming trend that we're seeing. You know, and we're just scratching the surface with that. It's something that's going to be expanding more, unfortunately, in the future. The reason why ARCW has a needle exchange program is in response to the HIV/AIDS epidemic and hepatitis C outbreaks, along with hepatitis B. What we know is if we're giving individuals clean syringes to use one time to inject drugs, they are going to lower their risk of HIV, hepatitis C, hepatitis B. At the same time, when those individuals are coming into our office, what's really important is they're having an individual serve them that is not judgmental, that's going to take time out to listen to them, that can bridge them to the methadone clinic, Wausau Health Services, that's going to be able to bridge them to counseling services, things like that. If they're an individual who's HIV positive, we can link them right to case management services within our office. If there's somebody dealing with hepatitis C or unsure of their hepatitis C status, we can provide them with a hepatitis C test. We can provide them with resources to help them deal with hepatitis C disease. HIV, hepatitis C, two very important diseases that really need to be addressed in the community. You know, as we introduced needle exchange, we saw that HIV/AIDS disease really went down overall in numbers directly related from injection drug use. Unfortunately, we're seeing an upward trend of new infections from individuals who are injecting drugs. So that's just really alarming. We just really need to watch that, monitor that, provide good information that way. Another really important aspect to our needle exchange program, while we're teaching individuals to be responsible, building a relationship with them so we can ultimately seek to get them into treatment, to get them clean, things like that, we provide Narcan or naloxone, which is a opiate antagonistic life-saving medication. The medication itself, you do not get a high from. In fact, it's just the opposite. So the medication that we're distributing to individuals, they're not able to get high from it. What it does is it stops the brain from absorbing opiates when a person is experiencing an overdose. This way the person can start breathing again and things like that. So it's really an important life-saving aspect that is just really important for saving lives overall in our community. Part of the aspect of the program itself is we show individuals a DVD. It lasts 12 minutes. If anybody wants to watch it, you can go to the Chicago Recovery Alliance website, anypositivechange.org, and watch the video that we have individuals watch. We also distribute this video to individuals to take home so they can share it with their loved ones, things like that, other individuals that maybe are afraid to come into our office to seek services, things like that. In addition to that, you know, we're also going to send them along with some information just about overdose prevention. The do's and don'ts, just as far as in a life-saving situation, when dealing with death. Talking about putting people in the recovery position, if they need to leave, to make that phone call to 911, things like that. We're also teaching them, quite honestly, how to use the Narcan. It's an injection that goes into a muscle. Once the injection happens, we encourage the individual to provide rescue breathing for the person after calling 911. We always stress to call 911 in that situation just because it's an emergency situation. We're dealing with a person's life. You know, that's directly somebody's child, somebody's mother, something like that. You know, and we need to save that life. Human life is a very important thing, and we need to save that as much as possible, which is why we have an naloxone program. Here in the Wausau office, we've trained 162 active injection drug users on how to use the medication. We've had 74 reported saves. Somebody that has received the medication and has brought them back from the overdose. So that's just really important that way. Unfortunately, we're dealing with a community that is very mobile, things like that. As somebody goes into treatment, is getting clean, things like that, we do lose some of that information. So I'm sure the reported saves number, the actual saves that we've had is much higher than that. So it's just really important that way. Dr. Brown, who oversees our naloxone program, is just really well known in the community throughout the state at providing a good supply of the Narcan itself, working with individuals who are actively injecting, teaching them how to inject safer, how to use the medication, and to ultimately just save a life. it's just so important that we're saving people from the Narcan aspect, that it's really good. Along with providing the rapid hepatitis C, rapid HIV testing information that we have. Teaching people, when they are going into recovery, things like that, their overall health. If we can keep them HIV, hepatitis C free, that's one less thing that they're dealing with when they're going through treatment to get clean, to move forward and be active participants in the community, things like that. This year we started rapid hepatitis C testing. Currently we've tested 162 people with our rapid hep C testing program. And we're finding about 20% of those individuals that we're testing are actually hepatitis C positive. So there's just quite an alarming trend of individuals with hepatitis C in our community. When we're looking at those individuals that we're finding that are newly infected with hepatitis C or finding out their hep C status, what's really concerning is it's young women, primarily under the age of 30, most of them under the age of 25 that are infected with hepatitis C. So again, I just really encourage anybody who's interested in the Narcan program to view the DVD if you want. We can send out a copy to you, or to log on to the website, Chicago Recovery Alliance, anypositivechange.org. It's a harm reduction philosophy run by Dr. Sars in the Chicago area. Thank you.
The update this week, so make sure that sign-in still goes around and that you get your name on there. We will send out the information from today's meeting, including the link from that, so I'll get that from Mike. So, Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Ebert. I am the supervisor of the emergency department at Aspire Wausau Hospital, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the overdoses that we have been seeing. A lot of times people ask for numbers, and unfortunately we don't track specifically overdoses. An overdose can be intentional or unintentional. It can be illegal drugs, it can be legal drugs, it can be that person that just took one too many sleeping pills that we're seeing. So that's kind of all lumped together, but we are seeing a significant increase in the number of overdoses. One thing that I want to read that I found on the internet, which you can find just about anything when you're looking, is talking about is a heroin overdose painful? And I think a lot of times people think this is a long process before you get to an overdose, and it can be a matter of a few seconds or minutes after they inject. So this was a blog written by someone who is a recovering heroin addict, and I just thought it was very good. It starts out from pricking the skin, jacking it, and then finally mainlining. You feel very little pain. About 6 or 7 seconds later, a rapturous rush comes over you like never before. Amazing. Too amazing. It's at this point that you think, whoa, maybe I did a little too much. So we're talking about a few seconds before they realize that there's a problem. Unfortunately, that's all you have time to think. Now, what you don't know is that you've passed out from using the drugs, unrelenting assault on your entire system. Soon your breathing will slow and eventually your heart will stop. And then you're dead. Perfect and painless. Very, very painless. In fact, the bliss that one would feel before they die of a heroin overdose would be immense, not painful. But let's roll back to right after you shot up and got the explosive rush. One of your buddies showed up and saw you barely breathing on the bathroom floor. Being the smart guy that he is, he called EMS, and now you're in the back of the ambulance. They're prepping you for that god-awful narcotic antagonist, which is the Narcan that we were just talking about, that's about to go into you. At this point, you're still barely breathing, drawing shallow, gurgly breaths while drool dribbles outside of your mouth. Your extremities have turned purple, and your hair is now completely matted down with sweat. It is now time for them to administer the shot. Within seconds, you reawaken to find yourself in a state of utter confusion and sudden horrendous agony. Your heart is racing and nausea sets in as you spew vomit all over the back of the ambulance. At this moment, you realize, what has happened to me? So I think a lot of times people think when there's an overdose that someone was using drugs for hours at a time, It's often that someone goes into the bathroom for a few minutes and then their buddy finds them, and that's the reality. And we're seeing this quite significantly. For the most part, I work during the day shift, and a lot of times we think that these things are happening at night, and they're not. On some days, we'll have 3 overdoses in the department at one time. So it's quite significant. The numbers, as I said, we can't share, and because of confidentiality, they all go unreported. So we're seeing it on on multiple times a week. This morning, I asked my staff, physicians and nurses, I said, tell me your most recent or best heroin story, and they all had stories. And a lot of times we just think of overdose as the main problem, and as we just heard, hepatitis and AIDS are also a part. One of our providers provided this story. She said she had just admitted somebody that had a heart infection from mainlining heroin. She had already had a valve replacement, and now she was infected again. And she was in very critical condition. And when I thought of this, I'm thinking, already had a valve replacement on their heart. You're thinking of kind of an age range in mind. And I said, how old? She said mid-20s. So it's a significant problem. One thing that I read, it was a question board online, and it said, can I get arrested for going to a hospital for heroin withdrawal? And then it said, I've had these issues, I've been throwing up, I've had headaches, and I'm afraid, but are there legal consequences if I go to the emergency department? And then it was interesting to read the people that answered. Some of the answers were more practical. You won't get arrested, but don't go there if you have an outstanding warrant, or don't take your drug paraphernalia with you. Some of them were, go to the ER if you can afford it. So this is where people are getting advice on should they seek health care or should they not seek health care. In reality, we cannot share information. We also cannot share it with parents as well. So if your 16-year-old is using drugs and comes to the emergency department, you will get a bill, but we cannot share that information. It is their legal right to confidentiality, which is a really hard thing for us because we, as parents, as all of us being parents, we would want to know. So some couple things to keep in mind. I also looked at data, not just in our emergency room, but where else we're being impacted. Our intensive care units, our neonatal intensive care unit, as babies are being born to mothers with addiction issues. And all of this healthcare cost is a significant cost to the community. Many of them are uninsured or underinsured, and healthcare can be quite costly. So these are just kind of some of the impacts that we're seeing from heroin.
Okay, thanks so much, Lisa. I was going to show this clip, but seeing as I don't think the audio works and we're running a little short on time, I'm going to send out, I actually had the privilege of meeting a woman, her name is, oh my gosh, I've totally lost it. Carol, I think. She's from the Madison area. This is her son, Craig. Craig was, much like many of the stories that you've heard, grew up in a home with the 2 loving parents, strong Christian family. They did everything right. He passed away from a drug overdose. Battled with addiction for many years. This is actually a trailer. It's like 2 minutes long. She actually took the money that was donated, and they're like, why don't you do a scholarship fund? And she said, this just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to do that. I need to do something so this doesn't happen to anybody else. And she created a 40-minute video that we do have copies of here. A few of us in the room had seen this trailer. I will send this out in the update as well. So I hope that you all will at least click and check out the trailer. And if you do want to get copies of the video, we have some copies available. So with that, I'd like to invite Ralph up. Carol, if you'd like to join him, you can. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Ralph Dixon. I'm here with my wife and my sister. If any of you are familiar with the accident on Thomas Street Bridge that happened on March the 23rd, Are you familiar with that? That was our son, Michael Dixon, and our grandson, Jordan Dixon. Michael had gone through the system, as we've talked about today, for quite a number of years. He had had some issues with marijuana early as a teenager. He had experimented at DC Everest with some friends with Oxycontin and with Vicodin. And it was kind of an off and on thing, but Michael ended up in trouble, usually getting arrested with paraphernalia. And he ended up over at Attic. He ended up at the with Wausau Health Services. And Michael on his own, I think if you've ever been, I had to ask a question. When I came in and I saw everybody here, I was really kind of surprised at the number of people that are involved in doing something about drugs. But how many of you have had a family member or somebody, a friend, somebody that you know personally who is an addict, who's been involved with drugs? Wow, a lot of people. You may know, like I have learned, that they can be amazingly deceptive. And sometimes you have no clue what's going on. Well, as far as opiates go, we got a clue because we got arrested a couple of times. So we ended up in the legal system. But Michael on his own, once Jordan, his son, who is now 4 years old, was born, Michael really strove to beat the addiction that he had. We did not become aware of the issue with heroin until time's flying by because of the accident. But prior to the accident in March, it was about 6.5 months ago that Michael came to me.
It was a year.
It was about a year at our home office, at home. And Michael sat down with Carol and I. He began to tell us of his problem with heroin, that he had gotten addicted to heroin. And Michael cried about it. He pleaded, and he was just so angry. And he said, I can't be it. Nothing I can do that stops me. And he said, I don't know why. It reminded me of the story in the Bible about the Apostle Paul talking about how that the things that he didn't want to do, that he found himself doing. And the things that he didn't want, that he wanted to do, he didn't do. And Michael said, that's my life. He says, I hate this thing, but I can't stop doing it. So with the help of some local people here, the parole department, etc., they literally had to lock Michael up for 2 months, pending a treatment program for him. And ultimately, Michael was transferred to the Flambeau Correctional Center up in Winter, Wisconsin. And Michael was there for 6 months. Sometimes I wish I could publish the letters that we got from Michael during that time. If we would visit weekly or every other week as we could, Jordan would go, Carol and I would go. And we would watch, we could see when Michael began to get, I think, his endorphins back, when he started getting happy, when there was life to him and not that dullness that was there during the time that he was on drugs. And it was like, we've got our son back. And Michael was very excited about life. He felt like, I'm going to beat this. And I finally have victory over this drug. But then on that Friday, Jordan and I drove to get Michael at the Flambeau Correctional Center. At 11:15 that morning, we walked out of Flambeau Correctional Facility. And Michael was just pumped, feeling that I've got this thing beat. That day we came home, my parents were there, my sister and her family were there, and we had dinner together. Jordan was just thrilled that his dad was home. The next day, Michael told us, he said, I've been working out every day since I've been at Flambeau, and I want to keep doing that, so I want to go pick up an MP3 player. And so he figured, I'm going to be gone for 30 minutes. So he loaded Jordan in the car. He took off to Best Buy. And during that time, that brief period of time, we were talking at 4 o'clock, we were gonna go to a movie and take Jordan to see a child's movie that was there. I had laid down on bed for an hour, taking a short nap. And Carol came in and woke me up, and she said, "Ralph, there are 3 police cars pulling up in our yard." And I had honestly thought at first naively that, he had had his license suspended because of not paying, keeping up to date while he was in lockup. And I thought maybe they didn't realize he had his license suspended and they picked him up. And the officers came into the house, and I could see the real somber look on their faces. And I thought then, oh man, he couldn't have done something again. And 2 of the officers, then they introduced the chaplain. And I'm a veteran, and I grew up as a military brat during the Vietnam era, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen black sedans pull up to a house to tell you that one of your friend's dad had died as a soldier. But anyway, I almost told him at that point to cut to the chase. And one of the officers said, sometimes our job is very difficult. And he looked at me and he said, just a few minutes ago, your son was involved in an accident and he passed. And I started picturing the highway or something at the time. Who would have dreamed it would happen right there by the police department? But the first thing I did was I shifted gears mentally, and I said, what about my grandson? He was in the car. And they told us, well, Jordan was seriously injured, and he was airlifted to Marshville. So, at the time, you have to put your son aside, and you have to immediately shift gear for the living. And so we ended up taking off and going to Marshville as fast as we could. In the last 2.5 months, I have spent every spare moment in Marshville. If I work, I go to Marshville, and I was with Jordan. Nobody expected him to live, but he did. And yesterday, he was finally released from the hospital. And I really do have confidence that he will fully recover. Here's what I would have to say from all this, from my perspective. When I was originally approached about talking, I thought, I told him, I said, I'm a bit of a skeptic. I said, if what you're going to do is similar to having a moment of silence for the children that were killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School, or light a candle for the marathon runners at Boston, I said, you've got the wrong person. And if that's the attitude that it's just going to be another thing where it's, we go through the motions and we're sympathetic, then we're in a lot of trouble. Because one thing my son did before he went into lockup was he gave me a big list of names of people where he could get drugs. He gave me license plates of vehicles, and I turned all those over to law enforcement people. But what concerns me today is I can drive around, and I'm not going to go into details on this, but when I was sitting over there were moments where I was just getting angry inside. And I was getting angry because I was looking at one of the guys that my son gave me information on. And I saw his car yesterday driving around town. And when I look at his record that's available online, I see 16 dismissals on this guy. 16 things that were dismissed, from substantial battery to possession with intent on cocaine, over the years since '03 until today. And this guy continues to go around, and I'm hearing people say, I watch him drive by and throw a package onto a lawn, and people come out and pick it up. And I'm wondering if I can sit here and I can see all these charges on this guy, and the guy's been sentenced at times to 5 years in prison and 3 years in prison, why is this guy still walking on the street? And these are the kind of things that bother me. And I think if that's going to continue to happen, we're pretty hopeless. And it won't just be my son who dies. There's going to be a lot of people who die. And I appreciate the medical examiner, what his emotion. And I really want to say I appreciate the law enforcement people and all of you. I have been amazingly impressed with everybody that I've talked to. And I feel for you because of just how huge this problem is, how hard you have to work, how much you care about this problem like we do. But I'm just saying, I hope this is really taken serious. So thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody for taking part in this panel today. I just quickly want to, very quickly, because I want to make sure we have some opportunities for some question and answers. But I just wanted to go over the kind of the goal of this campaign is to do just what Ralph said. We need everybody to get involved. We can't just take a moment and then forget. We need to continue to move forward because you don't want to have stories to back the need in the community. So some of the materials that you have in front of you in your packet, which I'm going to steal some. Is some of the materials that we've developed that are going to help us be able to reach out to the community, get them involved, get them working with law enforcement. Like on page 2, you have just a very basic fact sheet that we pulled off of our marketing plan. Marketing plan that was created through funds through the Alexander Foundation by Kinsey Green. Kirk Howard, he's sitting in the back and he is a saint in working and putting the plan together. If you haven't read it, it's got a lot of data in it, a lot of information. This is just a summary. On the back side of that basic fact sheet, we have how to report drug activity. What does suspicious drug activity look like? We try to keep it specific to the drug activity, not all suspicious activity. We did give you the contact information for both Marathon County Crime Stoppers. We have some Marathon County Crime Stoppers reps here today in the back. Hello, Joe, Kelly. 3 ways that you can use the tips there. That is completely anonymous. It gets bounced to at least 3 different locations if you call in. You can leave your name if you want, but it is coming through as anonymous. But there's also the Citizens Against Drug Dealers, or CAD. That's housed at the Wausau Police Department. The number is included there as well. Both tip lines offer cash rewards that lead to arrest. So if you see anything, it's something that we're encouraging the public. You don't have to take it anymore. If you see someone toss a baggie into a lawn, call law enforcement. Don't assume somebody else is. And the last page, just kind of how people can get involved. On an individual level, something as simple as going to checking out the website, sharing the information that you see there. In the back on the table, we've got some window clings. Some of you may have seen those already. They're not meant to be permanent, so if you already have one and it doesn't stick very well, clean the window, reapply. And don't put it on a window that can go up and down, right, Deb? She learned her lesson. It's still there. But take those window clings, put them up in your office, put them in your car, put them up in your homes. We also have some things for neighborhoods and schools to do. Go door to door, talk to your neighbors, get them engaged. Ask them to support the pushback campaign by putting those stickers up and working with law enforcement. We've also got some tips for organizations and business. If you're part of a civic or community group, on our sign and we asked, are you part of one of these groups? It's like, have presentation, we'll travel. If you've got somewhere where you think people would benefit from this, I always say, set up the meeting day, say my person will be there on this day, and we'll find somebody to go. We've got plenty of people that are passionate about this issue. We've got plenty of people that know this information. We want to get them out into the community to raise awareness. And on the back of it, actually, it's specific to foundations, looking at what it is that local foundations can do to help support in these efforts. Whether it's supporting our healthcare professionals to get the appropriate training for this short-term interventions, whether it's access to treatment. I don't want to say it's great, but it is great. Under the age of 18 couldn't go to Wausau Health Services for treatment. They got special permission and they treated their first person about a month ago, right? 2 months, time flies. So there's a lot of things that we can do as part of this. You all have that information in front of you. Again, it'll all go out in our update. Here's just some screenshots of some of those materials. And you will see everything that we talk about. Funding for prevention, treatment, and enforcement is critical. We cannot do it on one leg alone. We can't just expect law enforcement to go tackle the issue. What is that going to do? We need to change our community. We need to change what's out there. We need to reduce that access. We need to prevent people from dying, which is where Narcan, for example, comes in. So this is, again, the website here. We'll put everything up on it. I think that's all I had. Make sure the sign-in sheets, I'm going to keep saying it. Make sure the sign-in sheets get all the way around. So hopefully if you haven't seen the sign-in yet, if you want to raise your hand, we'll make sure that it gets over to you. So at that point, questions for any of our panelists here today? Don't be shy. Yes?
I'm just curious, I know I've asked this before, is Narcan equipped in all emergency vehicles? So if 911 is called and they show up at a heroin overdose, is it in every vehicle?
I can answer that.
It's in every ambulance.
It is in every ambulance, okay.
Can I, in the basic ambulance, it is not.
Okay.
Any treatment ambulance that is above the basic level has the Narcan in it and is trained to utilize it via intravenous, not intramuscular. Intramuscular takes longer.
Yes.
Well, I would make a quick offer perhaps. I mean, I think everybody's talking about epidemic, and I'm Lon Newman, I'm the Executive Director for Family Planning Health Services. So we look at things in terms of prevention, so I appreciate the remarks about we need to do more than incarcerate the living and bury the dead. We need to do some things in terms of prevention. So I'm glad to see Deb and Mike and Sandy and Lisa as healthcare providers. What we're engaged in right now is to try to develop a risk assessment because, of course, our people tend to be of reproductive age, young people in particular, and if they're taking risks in one area, they're probably taking risks in another. So we're trying to develop an assessment that can be utilized via telehealth network to bring some of the community health providers together to enable a person, say at a family planning clinic, to talk with a women's shelter counselor, or perhaps at Deb's clinic, or vice versa. So if I had a family planning patient who was at risk, I need to determine that first, and then try to make that connection so she, in our case most of the time she, but men too, can get care. And so in the Affordable Care Act now, there's some standards arising to have HIV testing, domestic violence screening, to have these kinds of things included as part of preventive package. So I think there's the means perhaps to connect these community providers, and if somebody would like to work on that effort, we'd love to. I know we met with Jane just the other day, and I know I gave Deb a call a little while back, and so we're very happy to help convene group. We need young people and people to talk about what an assessment tool would look like that they would feel is acceptable. And I mean, it's a little bit different. I don't want to change the whole direction of the group, but I think we just want to offer a little bit of a more, primary care prevention networking solution that we'd love to have your help with.
Any other questions? Yes.
Not sure who to ask, but is there anything going on to come up with some type of funding for some type of inpatient treatment in Marathon County?
Hmm? The answer is,
from in discussions, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Deb, it's always something that's been discussed as far as looking at that. It's definitely something that they see a need. It is a costly endeavor as well, So that's something that people are talking about it. I know North Central Healthcare is looking at opening up it was
Residential.
a residential
Right.
inpatient.
I'm not sure if it's open yet. Ron, do you have any information on that?
I don't,
I don't know if you talked to anybody anymore.
it's pretty close to being open.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have that. The issue though, with residential in the state of Wisconsin is that Medicaid does not pay for residential, only inpatients such as St. Joseph's Hospital.
Right, and then if you don't have insurance and you can't get into St. Joseph's, there's people trying to detox their children, their family members in their homes, you know, and there's nowhere to turn to. And it's almost impossible to do it before that person can't take it anymore and they leave.
Well, and that's actually
Waiting
something,
lists.
sorry. That's actually something that isn't, as a way to get people involved, you know, that's one of those suggestions for foundations to get behind. If we've got advocates, we've got strong support for an issue, we've got an army. I think in this one, Margaret Mead never believed that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed it's the only thing that ever had. We need to have those strong voices. So if it's something you're passionate about, it's something that's part of this campaign is to make sure people have access to treatment, we'll definitely take your help if you want to help, so.
It's really good that you spoke up today, and I heard the prevention piece too. And I do think also too, we need to look at prevention. And the needle exchange program that Mike talked about is really, I do the hepatitis C follow-up at the health department. And I really do have a hard time connecting individuals because they often are uninsured or underinsured and in a bad spot. And the only resource I have right now, often, is referring them to the needle exchange program, because at least we can teach them how to take care of themselves and how to prevent further transmission to others, and get them to a point where they can start thinking about how can I afford to get myself into some of these treatment programs also. We do need to talk a lot more about prevention, and I think it's great that law enforcement's involved. I'm excited that we have a lot of talk about what's going on in this community because it's here and we need to address it. And I think prevention is really, really needed, and we need to start talking about that.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions, comments? We've got 2 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
I think a lot of people, a lot of families might, watch drug shows on TV and see someone reporting a drug, activity, and then they get in trouble. So how do you tell residents that your family's not going to be in danger if you are reporting drug activity?
Do you want to respond to that, Gary? Ben? Or Wally?
I don't quite understand. You wanted to find out if people are reporting that they're not going to get in trouble. Oh, they're worried.
I think some people are afraid to report it.
Right, and that's a real concern that people have because they do watch TV quite a bit. And we talk about the whole anonymous thing. I mean, even if they call my office and speak to me directly, and they tell me who their name is, and they say they want to remain anonymous, I have an obligation under the law not to disclose that information to anybody because they do want to remain anonymous. So that's not advertised. We work around all of those issues all of the time, almost on a daily basis, when people don't want it to reflect back on them that they're the ones calling on their neighbor. So we do have some creative ways, and we'll discuss it sometimes, that we can't let them know if we do end up showing up in a neighborhood and making that arrest or finding out that there's some other, we find reasons for us to do the intervention on that individual. We will find them. But they do not, I think the law is the Monfils law is what they call it, is what was created several years ago when the man over in the Green Bay paper mill reported some activity and he ended up getting murdered as a result of reporting it to the police, and that law was put into effect in Wisconsin. And we abide by it very closely because it sets the departments up for a huge liability if we disclose that information if they do want to remain anonymous. Then there's people that say, I don't care. I'm going to take them head on. I don't care if you use my name or not. That's their option. And we will respect that if they do want to remain anonymous or not be known.
Kelly and Joe, can one of you guys just briefly talk about the kind of the process with Crime Stoppers, about how it's a nonprofit, not necessarily affiliated with a law enforcement entity?
Marathon County Crime Stoppers is a citizen-run organization that receives no money from Marathon County government. It's run through monies from donations, from foundations. The Sheriff's Benevolent Association is very kind to us with the donation every year. And what we do is another source for somebody who is afraid of the repercussions from a drug dealer, from somebody else in a drug organization, that you can report the crime and you can remain anonymous. You can do it either through our 800 number, which is a separate number at the Sheriff's Department, staffed by one of the dispatchers. That number is not recorded, or the conversation on that is not recorded. You can text in tips, which actually go down to Texas and up to Canada, and they're encrypted and everything, and that way they're not traceable either through the court system or any other means. You can report on our website, marathoncountycrimestoppers.org, and there's a method to do that also. We've used Facebook to apprehend criminals very successfully, so we're using social media also. Many different ways to fight back, but still remain anonymous, and possibly get a reward should you decide to go that route.
Thank you. Any other questions? Wally, would you like to wrap us up?
Sure. You know, one thing about this campaign is there's a lot of different people that sit at these tables. You know, obviously law enforcement, and Gary touched on this, we try to go ahead, you know, they focus on the people bringing the stuff in, they focus on bigger dealers. Ultimately, we got to decrease demand. You know, the demands for that, if the demand is there, people will provide that product. It's simple economics and it's money driven. There's a lot of anonymous sources to be able to report this, but sometimes as a community, it's important that everybody stands up and says, no, we're just not going to tolerate it. That you take that vocal stand. It's challenging for law enforcement to, you know, enforce the laws. Case law hasn't been real good for law enforcement lately. You talk about some of the dismissals. It's frustrating. Their hands are tied on what they need to be able to get this through trial. We would love nothing better to have every case fly. It doesn't always happen. Prevention, you know, there's a lot of aspects of this. It isn't a simple answer, which is why we put all these people together in this room, and we're counting on everybody to work in their respective areas, but coordinate together so we can try to come up with something that's going to work. It is an issue and affects everybody here. This is a start. Get involved. Find out how you can work with your given talents and your specialties and your area of expertise to be part of the solution. But stand up, be public, be vocal about it. Today's user and someone with addiction could be tomorrow's dealer, and you know, it is escalating. We talked about that slippery slope, starting with alcohol, starting with marijuana. You know, teach your kids. Just we had some in the news today about, you know, kids on a dating initiation. It starts small. Attack those little things. Address it before it gets out of hand. Find out what your kids are doing at home. Find out what they're doing on social media sites. You know, get involved in their lives. One of the disturbing trends we heard is about the youth. You know, start there. Start in home. Teach your kids right and wrong, know what they're doing, be active, be involved in their lives. And then find out how you can work with this coalition and just avail yourself, get involved, be vocal about it, and Melissa will put you to work. You'll find something for you to be involved in.
Just need 5 minutes. That's all I need.
But I'd like to thank everybody for coming. This is just one step. We'll be doing this again in August as we take some additional steps forward.
Will Everest Metro activity be added to the pushback sites?
We can
Right
put
now,
some-
it's the city of Wausau.
Yeah, that's what Jeff put there for the last campaign. And Gary has a little more, Gary's numbers are probably even better because he's got stuff that covers the entire county instead of just department by
I
department.
think it's important we all realize this is the city of Wausau issue.
No,
Right
this
now,
is
things
a
are very
really wide issue.
ton of information. Again, we've got a few handouts still in the back. Deb brought some information from the Wausau Services if you want to know about what they offer there. I'm going to put them out here. You can leave any unwanted copies on the table. You can leave your name tags on the table. We thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, some of our panelists probably can stick around just a little bit. Ask questions. Thanks.
Nice job.